Well, hey, and welcome to another episode of Beatles Dustino, coming at you again today with yet another video and yet another Dustino score album review video. Haven't done one in a while, and I'm trying to keep a little more frequent on it. So we're up for the next one in the series, as I'm kind of going in release order, and I'm including the US and the UK ones all together, the UK and the US, I should say. And this guy will be the next one up, Beatles' second album. So let's see about its review and its Dustino score after the intro. Yes, up next on the Dustino score album review series, we're going to have the Beatles' second album. And this originally came out on April 10th of 1964. Was the second Capitol album after Meet the Beatles, so there's the second album in there. However, it was the third in the US after introducing the Beatles and Meet the Beatles, and it was actually the fifth in North America between at least Canada and the US, since coming after Beatlemania with the Beatles, Twist and Shout, well, I suppose introducing the Beatles, Meet the Beatles, Twist and Shout, and then this, so the fifth. Actually, altogether, if you include Capital of Canada plus VJ Records in the US here. So kind of an odd name in a way, but it makes sense if you're just looking at it from the US Capital aspect there. But yeah, there is the front and the back, and yeah, let's get into some more on it here, I guess. It's compiled mostly of leftovers which are R&B and rock and roll covers from with the Beatles. And then it's also contains a couple of tracks from the Long Tall Sally EP, which was yet to release in the UK, so they were first available on this, at least those two tracks out of the four on that EP. A lot of B-sides with only one hit single being on it, so really kind of surprising on that. So most of the Lennon-McCartney stuff are B-sides on this, if it's not from the Long Tall Sally EP, and the one which is She Loves You, which is the only hit that was really on it in terms of that. Not like all these songs aren't hits, being that they are Beatles songs. And like, I mean, any Beatles song is just great, even their covers. So there's the track list there. Critics tend to really like this album as it's, and kind of consider it their purest rock and roll album. Not rock album, rock and roll. So real, true rock and roll from the late 50s into the early 60s there. That is kind of what this really represents well, especially in the Beatles canon catalog here. It debuted at number 16 on the Billboard Top Pop charts. The next week it went to number 1, displacing Meet the Beatles, which Meet the Beatles had been introducing the Beatles, I believe, if I'm getting that all correct there. It stayed for 5 weeks, though, at number 1. Stayed within the top 200 until May of 1965. It is certified gold as of April 13th of 1964. And it is 2 times certified platinum as of January 10th of 1997. Formats available on it as I go through that with this too. Of course, we got the LP, both in mono and stereo versions. Reel-to-reel was available, cassette, 8-track, and CD. Its first CD appearance wasn't until 2004, as it seemed like in 1987 when they released the UK catalog on CD for the first time, and Magical Mystery Tour was kind of introduced into the main core canon catalog there. The only Capitol album that did. It seemed like they were abandoning the other Capitol albums. Well, in 2004, they did get a little respect in the Beatles Capitol Albums Volume 1 box set. So it was only available in the box set, but the album was one of the individual discs in there. And that was available in both the original Capitol, Dave Dexter Jr., all the added reverb and sped up and this and that, and echo and everything, and in both the stereo and the mono version on that. And then later in 2014, it did get reissued again on CD, this time in the US albums box set, but it was more the 2009 stereo and mono remaster, so that had the mono version and then the stereo version on that disc too, and that was available individually too on CD. So it was available individually at some point As a matter of fact, I think I've got the individual version of it just sitting here in the mini LP with the little Obi strip and everything. So there we go on that. So I think we got the full little rundown on the history of it and everything, and let's get into the actual Dustino score and kind of what I thought of my review of the album here. So the first track kicking it off is Roll Over Beethoven, which is kind of interesting because this is the first time George is lead vocal on an opening track on a Beatles album. So pretty cool on that, and it is what I think one of the first to open up with a cover on top of that. So this one was already on with the Beatles. This is one of the ones off of With the Beatles, and I'm giving this track an 8 in its score. I said in this case, so it's a really great opener on that. So track 2 is Thank You Girl, which is the first album appearance of it. The B-side from Me to You. There we go. And I said it fits nice as the second track on this album. It really does a great job at that, and I'm giving that one an 8. I think that's the first time I've been able to score that one, as I haven't done any of the singles or EPs or anything yet. So then the next track, the third track, is You Really Got a Hold on Me, another carryover from With the Beatles. Second cover on the album, keeps up the rock / R&B vibe that is what makes this album so fun and great. Still amazed what the Beatles could do with these R&B songs I wrote. And then I give this one an 8 also on that. Track 4 is Devil in Her Heart. First Lennon-McCartney track off of With the Beatles. So this one was also on With the Beatles, and one of the few Lennon-McCartney tracks that was carried over from With the Beatles that made it onto the Beatles' second album here and not Meet the Beatles. Oh, I said second George vocal on the album already, and we're only 4 tracks in, so that's kind of an interesting thing. And I said solid, but doesn't do a lot for me. I don't know why, it doesn't. And I'm giving it a 7.5, so it's still a pretty decent score. But track 5 is Money, That's What I Want. So interesting going from the closer of With the Beatles to now getting carried over to kind of mid-pack on the Beatles' second album here. Back to another kind of R&B track here. It's kind of interesting how this album goes. It almost does go like R&B track to rock and roll track, R&B, rock and roll, R&B, rock and roll. It really seems to kind of just go back and forth between the two kind of genres there, which I really think really gives the album a really great little pop to it. So, and the score does do very well. So I wrote just a great Lennon vocal, and this one's getting a 9. I think this is well deserving of a 9 on that. So really good cover on that. I feel like on With the Beatles, it was really trying to be that album closer and live up to the hype of Twist and Shout did for Please Please Me. I think it just fell just a little short, but it's still not bad. I don't think it's going to live up to that, but just that just Lennon vocal wrecking thing to end it off. And now here it's, in the middle of the Beatles' second album. But moving on to track 6, we got You Can't Do That. And I wrote, more cowbell.
I could have used a little more cowbell.
And I said, fun rockin' song. Love the harmonies and a great sing-along on that. And I mean, I have so much fun when I hear this song. And this is its first time on an album. One of the tracks off of, actually, this was a pretty early one too, because this would have been the B-side to Can't Buy Me Love, wasn't it? Another B-side, but a really good B-side. And I'm giving it an 8.5 on this. So pretty good job on that. Track 7 will be the first time I'm ranking this one too. Is Long Tall Sally, of course, off the Long Tall Sally EP. Again, another little preview from the UK that we're getting a little early on the Beatles' second album in the US here on Capitol in the US. I said, what a rocker. Why do people consider these covers so bad or not a good thing for the Beatles to do? I love the Beatles covers of all these tracks that they did over the time. I think that's why I love Live at the BBC so well. I love hearing them doing all those R&B and rock and roll covers like that. And even like show tunes and stuff. There's a lot of that on Live at the BBC, isn't there? Fantastic Paul vocal. Love the piano in it. Its first album appearance, as I kind of said there. And I said another legendary Beatles cover, truly legendary. This is getting a 9.5, so it's right up there with Twist and Shout in terms of high-scoring Dustino scored Beatles cover songs. So there we go. So moving on to track 8, we got I Call Your Name, another debut on an album here, and another kind of early preview. As this, I believe, is another one off of the Long Tall Sally EP. This is the second one off of that one. So again, I said more cowbell again.
I gotta have more cowbell, baby.
Love the guitar in this one. Also, it really doesn't have the typical Beatles harmonies in it, does it? There isn't that. It's pretty much just a straight John vocal on it. And I think it still works great on that. And I'm giving it an 8.5. So it did pretty well on that too. Track 9 is going to be Please Mr. Postman. So you got another one off of With the Beatles, another cover off of With the Beatles. Love the rockification of another girl group song. There we go. Another cover. And it's a pretty solid one, or another solid cover. There we go. It's a pretty solid one, so I'm giving it an 8 also on that. And then track 10 is I'll Get You. Like the harmonies on it and the walking bass line. I really think that's kind of cool. Oh, love the harmonica. That's what I wrote. I can never read my own handwriting because I'm like, why would I write like the harmonies again? As that's my next note. So.
Whoa! Oh no! Oh jeez!
Like the harmonica and the walking bass line. Great harmonies again. That was my little jot down note on it. And I'm giving I'll Get You an 8. Last track on the album is She Loves You. So the only hit single that got put onto this Capitol album. Another absolute Beatles classic I wrote. Ringo's drumming is fantastic on it. I don't know why that really stood out to me on this listen of it. Yeah. A great album closer. And I'm giving it an 8.5 on that. So that'll do it for the scoring there. So now the overall album score, as I add up the track scores divided by 11, as that's how many tracks we got, that comes out to an 8.3 out of 10, which will be the first kind of category of the Beatle Dustino score here. The flow and vibe of the album, I think, is fantastic and spot on. It is a 10 out of 10. I think this album really, really works. The artwork and packaging, I'm going to give a 7.5 out of 10. I'm not a huge fan of this cover, and the packaging does lack a little, as there really isn't much in any of the variations on it. So a 7.5. It is what it is. It doesn't need to be much more than that. So I'm not going to like knock it down huge on points just because of that. Yeah, that's where it's going. Packages available. I think it's got, pretty much every format you could imagine, including streaming. However, you can only get it streaming on the US albums box set. Within the box set, you can't just find the Beatles' second album on its own. You got to listen to the box set or just find that section of the box set to listen to. But it is available streaming too. I did forget to mention that in the formats available. But that is, of course, the US albums version, so not the true Capitol albums mixes. However, it had just recently got reissued too, and I did write this on the notes and I forgot to mention it, on vinyl only and mono vinyl only. Just last year in 2024 as part of the Beatles US albums 1964 in mono box and individual availability too. Yeah, packages available. I'm going to give it a pretty solid 9 out of 10, as there is no to get a 10 out of 10 you need a good super deluxe box set, in my opinion. There is no like super deluxe version of Beatles' second album. I don't think there ever will be, so it's going to stay at a 9 out of 10 on that. So adding up the totals together, we're getting a 34.8 out of 40. So a pretty solid score on that. And I did say I was going to kind of adjust the With the Beatles score and let you know after this as the Meet the Beatles ranking. I know I adjusted a few of the tracks on With the Beatles when I did that ranking. As I did the same with the Beatles' second album, I did adjust a few on there too, and I was going to wait until I got Beatles' second album done, because then we pretty much had the whole With the Beatles album done. So the updated score on that, the song total went from a 7.8 to an 8.1, and the overall total for With the Beatles went from a 34.8, so that would have been the same as Beatles' second album here, to a 35.1. Pretty interesting so far how these are all kind of turning out, as the US albums are staying right up there in terms of the UK albums, the Parlophone EMI albums that originally came out in the UK. It's really kind of interesting, which basically these are compilations. I'm not going to say anything different. They are albums, yes, but they aren't the intended true studio album. They are a compilation of Beatles songs put onto an album. I've had a hard time accepting them, as I always say this story. I came up in the CD era. So when I started collecting the Beatles, I started with the UK CDs. That was what I was collecting at the time. And I wasn't buying used vinyl or anything like that. So even though it was probably the most prominent version available in the United States, even in the mid-90s there, I was still collecting the CDs that were just freshly being released and getting into the UK aspect of it, not the US aspect of it. And when people would talk to me, you know, older adults would, you know, oh, that song should be on, you know, this album. And I'm like, no, this is this album. I got so confused, like how they were so confused on it. I'm like, didn't you grow up with this? Didn't you? And they did, but they grew up with it on, you know, the Beatles' second album, not with the Beatles or something like that. Or the Beatles' second album, not Long Tall Sally EP or Past Masters, like I'm used to it. Yeah. So, but it is what it is, and I'm really kind of happy that the U.S. albums are scoring out this well. I think it's given them some justification. It's given me even better appreciation now for the U.S. albums, which I wouldn't say I've been lacking on it. It's just the U.S. albums kind of confuse me, but now I'm really seeing why people really gravitate to them and love them that have grown up with them. I can see what the attraction is, the appeal, when these albums are ranking right up there in the Dustino score, right with the UK stuff. Yeah. So just kind of curious how it's all going to keep rolling here with it. So I think A Hard Day's Night is up next. I believe it's the US version of A Hard Day's Night. I think that did beat the UK version to market. So that should probably be the next one here. And I'm curious how those two are really going to, especially those two, are going to hold up together. I think the Help US version versus the Help UK version too. And I think the Rubber Soul one, I think is going to be very interesting how that's going to come out with the Dustino score, comparing the two versions. And Revolver too. I think Revolver, I know how that one's going to turn out. The US one is going to be less than, obviously. I mean, there's how many songs taken off of it. So, but yeah. Anyways, I'm going to get signing out. Wow, that was a lot of stuff I usually cut out all in one thing. Before I do get signing out, though, I am going to once again thank all my subscribers and thanks to any new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And do hit the notification bell so you know when I got new videos coming out. Also, please give the video a like if you like it. And like I always say, if you've stuck around to this point, you must like it. So please give it a like and do leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. Let me know your thoughts on the Beatles' second album. How would you rank it? Do you think I'm giving it a fair score? Or do you think I'm overdoing it? Do you think I'm underdoing it? Let me know your thoughts on it. Remember, though, this is my score. This is my opinion. Your score and opinion are going to be different. And if it wasn't, why would we want to watch this video? Right? So anyways, and your answer is just as right as mine too. I want to point that out, that you're just as right as I am on this. So whether you agree or disagree, you are just as right as I am on this. As long as we're sitting to listen to the Beatles, who is going wrong at all, right? All right. Anyways, I get fully signing out. I am Beatle Dustino, signing out.